Hello, hello, hello. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Accountability Success Circle monthly webinar. In this month, we are talking about, uh, you know, crafting your 2022 plan now. We are all still on the high of creating our plans. If you're not part of the circle, you might not have known that we had a retreat 2 weeks ago in
Woohoo!
beautiful Southern California, where we in community went through an amazing framework that April has done for year after year after year. And this was our second annual retreat. And
Yay!
we're going to be talking about the benefits of that and just quick what's up to the people watching live or virtual on the replay. I see you, Terry. Terry was there. Terry is amazing. I'm excited to see what's in store for Terry in 2022. But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to April to get us rolling on this. I believe you are over here. Yeah,
You're over here for me, so I don't know. We'll find out.
we'll figure it out.
See, hold on. Which way? I think I have. I don't know. Anyways, hey guys, super excited to share content this week for you. For those of you who are new to figuring out what the Accountability Success Circle does, and for those of you who were at the retreat with us, or anybody who is in the community but hasn't quite done gotten on the bandwagon for annual planning. And like, I always love to say that this is like my favorite month because there's so much energy that comes out of it. I have been doing annual planning since 2015, so planning for the year 2016, and it's kind of crafted into this process over the years that then I was able to kind of package and share with other people starting last year. And having Gary and Rebecca be on the team with me to help add some extra flair so that I'm not like just constantly chit-chatting and talking up a storm, but also getting their perspectives because that they have some amazing things to share, and we all are very aligned in terms of the way that we think and the things that we do, to create this retreat that we've been doing every October, which maybe I'll just plug next year. We already know what those dates are. It's October 7 through 9, 2022 to plan for 2023. So if this is something that you are kind of curious about, maybe put that on your calendar, pay attention, because over the next hour, we're going to, share, some of the processes involved in kind of creating your annual plan. For those of you who have been around the community, we did a similar conversation last year because, things can grow and evolve as we go. I don't necessarily think that the content that I'm going to share in this month is going to be exactly what you saw in the webinar that we did 12 months ago, which I think would then be, if this is the 26th, then maybe it was the 26 minus 12, the 14th webinar we did. But there's, every time I do this process, I learn more, and I'm so happy that the full leadership team is here to share some ahas from the weekend and just add some extra flair to the content that I'm going to present today. So when I want to start by saying that I know that there's still two and change months left before 2022, but I can't stress enough how important it is to get started, to start thinking about what you want next year now, because I say this every year, but waiting until January to start thinking about what you're going to do for the year, you're going to spend a good amount of time thinking about what you're going to do, that by the time you've decided, the year might already have been passed, right? Like, we're looking at the fact that it's already October 20th, and we don't even know how we got here. So, a lot of times it takes some time for your plans to really settle in, and we don't want to do it in November because that's when Thanksgiving is, and we start thinking about the holiday season, and then December we're already thinking about the holidays, respective holidays that we all celebrate. So, once we hit that mid-November, we're kind of like losing the time to think about things because that's where the flurry, things get crazy. And so, doing it in October is, it allows for those of you who are parents to kind of settle into the academic year, which usually starts August, September, and kind of this middle ground where you are thinking about what you can do for next year without having the distractions of busy. So I really want to encourage you, if you have not thought about maybe making that shift of um, having a having a plan occur, in November, December, or if you wait till January, you might want to think about, we still have 10 days in October, maybe we start this process. But I would encourage you to, once you get into this process, this feeling of getting it done in October gives you, basically the rest of the year to like really hone in and plan for the next year. You get to be present for the holidays. You really get to just like enjoy the process of like knowing what you're doing. And then you have this momentum that comes, this early in the year where you might even start working on what you want to do for 2022. So you're almost setting yourself up for success before the year has even started. I know that it seems like, sometimes you can't plan tomorrow, but it really takes some time and space to really think about what it is that you want if you're going to have intentional plans. And so I wanted to just get feedback from Rebecca and Gary, because I know that last year when we did the first retreat, that was the first time that, they've both known that I've been doing this annual planning, but I kind of roped them in at the same time that I roped everybody else in to actually have this, have this dedicated time in October to like think about what they want for the upcoming year. And now that you've gone through 2 cycles, I'm really curious to hear how, from your perspective of like now jumping on the bandwagon, what the benefits have been and what things that you've seen shift for you in the past year. So I don't know who wants to go first.
Yeah, I'll go first. Um, like most people, there's a lot. I have all kinds of stuff that I could be doing. I think the main thing, that shifted for me is, starting to be intentional about the things I want to create. I'm a type of person that gets overwhelmed with lots of details, and what I liked about the process is that um, it was modular. Like instead of like, all right, go ahead and plan your next year's goals, and you're like, oh, I don't know. We started with like the things that make sense. Like values, and we start to look at each of the the wheel of life, and start to assess where we are, and that started to bubble up some stuff where I'm like, oh yeah, actually this is of importance. And then from there, I started getting the ideas of like, oh yeah, what about this, what about this. And so I think it's almost like following that sort of cookie crumb trail, that when it's done you're like, oh wow, I have some awesome things. Now it doesn't guarantee that when the year starts, like you're going to be like, oh yay, but because we're starting so far in advance, it gives you that half a chance. You're already rocking and rolling. And I remember Mike, in the community, talking about, and actually Eric as well. Eric this year was talking about like in Q4 and getting that sort of that jump start. But Mike last year, he got so much of a jump start, he had to adjust because he started achieving things before the year even started. So, anyways, that's a long-winded answer of saying pretty awesome.
Rebecca, what are your thoughts on now having done this process for 2 years in a row?
Yeah, I mean, I believe in it, and
That
I
was a lot of
was
conviction.
chatting with
No, I'm kidding.
I believe in it. I was chatting with someone from the ASC the other day, and I think some people are like this. And in terms of, I don't, but if I put it on paper and plan it, then there's like no wiggle room, and I like to go with the flow. But realizing that after surviving the first year of doing the planning and watching my year unfold, there's still so much room, like wiggle room. So having just that, to me, it felt like a structure, like a very solid structure, but with lots of like space. And if I picture it as like a building, there's like windows and the wind can blow through it. Like it's not so set in stone that there can't be room for flow and change. But having that structure was huge, like having an idea of even the quarters. And I have yet to look at the quarters of 2022, but when I did it last year for this year, it absolutely helped me because time is going by so fast for me. I think time is something you can morph and move, but right now, I don't know if this is true for everybody, but it is just flying by. So to get those containers set where I know like, okay, in Q1, I want to make sure I've run a group coaching program in Q2. And so to at least have those like mile markers or whatever has been so helpful for someone like me who does like to keep things loose and open, but I've watched myself do that and still not get stuff done. So this has been really helpful for my productivity. And the wheel of life is also just something that I'm reminded like how important that is. And I don't think I've done it since maybe last year. And just to remember like, wow, I want to do this like once a month, once every 6 to 8 weeks. And to let that also help me figure out what part of my life, whether it's the low hanging fruit or the different ways to use wheel of life, but to let that be such a powerful check-in of like, oh yeah, right now I really want to put a little boost into my social, relationships. And last year compared to this year, and also using that as if you actually draw it out or have a visual that you can return to of like, oh yeah, this has been low for me. Is this not actually that important to me? Or is this something that I just haven't even realized that I do want to like put some life into? And I have to say that even just after last week, realizing that social relationships, I use it because that is my example, have been like a little lower. And so I have set up some FaceTime dates with friends, and it's just given me that, like, I'm a very visual person. So to have that visualization or that visual of, okay, I want my social stuff to be boosted. What can I now take action on? So right after the retreat last weekend, I was like texting friends, and magically I had some friends also reach out, just like, so that already has been boosted. So I also think like what you put energy into, that will grow, no doubt. So even just to have that time set aside, I've already seen without a ton of effort, those things I've wanted to boost be boosted naturally. So I think there's also a little bit of that kind of special quantum-y thing that goes on as well.
Yeah, for sure. And so for those of you that are like, what is this wheel of life and what is all of this? I want to definitely talk about this. But so here's the thing, when it comes to planning, I know that sometimes people have a lot of doubt around like, okay, if I plan, then it's like it's solid and then I have to do it, and then that's just putting a lot on my plate, and that comes with a lot of stress. And the one thing that I want to share about the whole annual planning process is it's not as rigid as you think it is. I think a lot of times people think of like when I'm creating a plan, then it's like a thing that I have to follow. And yes, that's what that's intended to be. But, we know, even with just the things that we've dealt with in the last couple of years with COVID, like unexpected things happen, and we have to, as much of a plan as we can make, there's still going to be this opportunity where, things that are unexpected are going to jump in. And yes, it's very important to want to be able to feel that balance between that flow, but without a crafted plan, sometimes we just don't have like the directions, right? It's like it's almost like when you're trying to drive somewhere and you're like, okay, I know that it's kind of in this direction, but like, let me get, Google Maps and let me just pull it up so that I know turn by turn. You don't necessarily think about that, but you kind of know where you want to go. But in order to really get there, you can use the Google Maps, which is, like a more detailed plan. But then there's the fact that like, oh, there might be an accident, and then, it might add a few more minutes to your travel time, but maybe there's like another route that you can take, like a side road to kind of skirt that and get back on track. This is kind of how this is like. So think of the annual plan as like knowing where you want to go, but we're not getting into the details per se, at least like the step-by-step details on like how you're going to get there. But we're going to give you at least some things that you need to think about in order to craft that more detailed turn-by-turn plan. So when we talk about annual planning, I'm not saying, hey, on January 26th, I'm going to go to this appointment and I'm going to go to this appointment and this is going to be like the turn by turn. We're really just starting to think about the steps that are going to help us get to where we want to be. But if we don't create that space, that was something that Rebecca was saying, if we don't create the space to know where we want to go, then we live in this like kind of reactivity mode where we're like, okay, well, I know that that is something that I want, so let me do that. But if we really want to maximize our personal fulfillment, this is where annual planning comes into play. Yes, we can like in our mind think like, yeah, that's what I want. But is it what we really want? And without that space, we just can't really get into the why of what we're, what's the why behind the things that we do, I can't talk today. I'm so like excited. This is, getting underneath the why of why we really want to do the things that we do. So, so thank you guys for sharing on that. So, Rebecca was talking about, and Gary also talking about how powerful the Wheel of Life is. And if you are in the community, that was one of the things that I shared straight off the bat when we started this month's theme of 2022 planning. I think that, at the cornerstone of annual planning, if there's going to be one bare minimum thing that you do is to, do a self-assessment. And that's what the Wheel of Life is. The Wheel of Life assessment that I put together, that I've shared in the community and at large with, anybody who's been following me, kind of takes the Wheel of Life, which is basically a tool to measure your satisfaction in various areas of life. So there's, according to my Wheel of Life, there's a whole bunch of them out there, and you don't have to necessarily do mine, but this is the way that I've broken it down. I've broken it down into 8 areas. Health and wellness, family, intimate relationships, social relationships, money, career, fun, and personal development. And you can define those however way you want, but to just assess, those are the different slices of your life, in a sense. These are the things that all contribute to our overall happiness. There's other things that could be part of your pie that I may have not mentioned, but those are the ways that I've broken them down and able to compartmentalize all the different facets of my life. And so we use that model, but you basically go through and you assess, hey, how satisfied am I in this area? And some you may be more satisfied than not. And there's others where you might want to put more work into, but this gives you that opportunity to assess your current state, which is kind of the first part of the process, which is knowing where you're at, right? Because if you don't know where you're at, then you can't really envision where you want to go. So that's the first step. The worksheet that I have created specifically, like, almost starts to get you into the mindset of thinking ahead of like what you would want to do. So like once you do the self-assessment and you kind of celebrate, hey, this is what I've done that's good, but here's where I can take this area of life to the next level. That's where we start to move into the second step of annual planning, which is identifying what you want and is creating the vision. So without getting into too much detail about the process that we went through in the retreat, the pre-homework for everyone was to do the self-assessments. That also included really like recommitting to your values, which, we as the leadership team talk about how important it is to understand what your values are. And yes, they can change over time. But in other cases, they might be tattoo worthy. So really understanding like what drives you, what motivates you, because those are going to be the things that are going to help you take action on a plan that you would create. So doing that self-assessment, really understanding what's important to you, what your priorities are, what your values are, and where you feel you are in terms of your own personal fulfillment to start. So that's kind of the step one. The step two, which I mentioned, is like really then starting to create a vision, which we, at the retreat, we get really, really creative. And, we're putting, Post-it notes up on the walls, and we're standing up, we're writing with like colorful markers. We're trying to take ourselves away from electronics and really just allowing ourselves to sit there and think about like, what is it that I really want? And so there's certain questions that could be asked, like, if I think about where I want to be at the end of next year. So for us this year, we were thinking about, at the end of 2022, what do I want to be able to say that I accomplished? So what are the things that I did? We want to think about what are the types of feelings that we want to have. Like, is it an increased fulfillment? Do we want to feel more confident? Do we want to feel more connected? Those might be, feelings that are in line with your values. You also want to think about like how you're showing up. Are there different things personally that you're going to do to grow? What are things that you want to manifest? So there is this aspect of like putting yourself in the shoes of you 12 or 14 months from now, and really envisioning what that feels like, what that looks like, how things are showing up. What are the tangible things that you can say that you've accomplished? One of the things that I said is, I want to make sure that I've, run a half marathon again, which I haven't done since 2015. So that was something that I thought to, the end of next year, that I want to be able to, when I go to this retreat again next year, to be like, I did that because that was part of my plan. So you want to step yourself into that future self and work on that vision. So I'm going to turn to Rebecca and Gary to see if they have anything to add to just the second part of this process after having the self-assessment of like creating that vision. Was there anything in the process of doing the retreat this year that stood out to you, or any pointers for people who are watching in terms of how can you create this vision for yourself for the next year? Who wants to go first? Rebecca will go first.
Well, I'll share real briefly because I am going to write an article for ASC. I'll post it later today, but as I've said at least once today, I'm a visual person. So in terms of actually having the vision, what really helps me is doing, and I tell everyone I can to do this, of like an ideal day or a dream day description. And before, like, I'm now here in California, where a year ago I was not, but I always wanted to be here. But I spent so many mornings just like before I got out of bed picturing my ideal day. And part of that was it was blurry for a while, but when we did the planning last year in October, and we started to actually break down some of that strategy and things, it was much easier for me to then like visualize in the mornings. Wow, I know what it feels like. I've spent time in California, just like to let myself go through like, what does that dream day look like? And picturing myself where I wanted to be. And for me, it was a big deal to actually move physically. Not everybody's going to have that. But for me, it was like relocating. And then what does it look like from there? Well, I don't want to wake up to an alarm. I don't want early clients anymore. And just crafting out like, what would be a dream day? And I've done this for years in different ways of like journaling, visualizing. So I definitely encourage folks to take some time to do that. And like I said, I'll type up a little short reminder later today that you'll see posted. But I just think it's so powerful to get a felt sense. And like you've mentioned, feeling already in terms of some of this work. And it is about like getting every cell in your body to feel like, what is that desired outcome, no matter the component, whether it's a certain part of your life or whatever. So yeah, that's my take on visualizing.
Woohoo. Gary, how about you?
For me, well, first and foremost, Rebecca said it all. Far too often, like, as sort of very busy type A personality adults, that want to do a lot of things. We have these big ambitions. We focus so much on the how, like, oh, how are we going to get there? How are we going to get there? And it stifles our sort of creativity and imagination. And the visualization component is crucial for a few reasons. One, when you just start to visualize, how you want to feel, where you want to, like, all of those things, it may seem like, oh, I'm just, sort of like head in the clouds. And yeah, you're right. Your head is in the clouds. But one of the cool things is that you can start to have that path start to realize. And I like to sort of like think about when, maybe the first time you saw a Tesla or heard about a Tesla. And you're like, oh, what's this electric car, and whatnot, and maybe you saw a picture, and then all of a sudden now you see them everywhere. We see them so much. Me and my wife, we have this game that my wife doesn't really like as much as I do, but it's a game called Tickle Tesla. Like, you remember back in the day we had like Slug Bug, like when you see a VW bug, you like a slug bug and you like sort of punch the person. And so now it's like Tickle Tesla, and my wife really hates being tickled, but and so I see it all the time. But the whole point is with the visualization aspect is now you start to see it. So if you start to visualize, yeah, how do I want to be, what, we're not talking about the how yet, but we're just sort of allowing yourself to do it. You will start to see that path. It will start to unfold for you. And then two, it unlocks creativity. The default mode of the brain is where creativity happens. That's where your brain is connecting the dots. And if you give yourself that space to be imaginative and creative, when it's time to actually get down to some of the nuts and bolts of starting to put things there, like into place, it will make it a little bit more enjoyable and easy for you.
I love that. Yeah, I think it's really, really super important to get out of the how. And that was something that I don't know if I even stressed enough during it, because I've just been doing this process for so long. But the problem with thinking about, creating your vision, but also thinking about like the steps that you need to get there in the process while you're visioning, this is where you may sell yourself short, because this is where fear comes up. Like, can I actually do this? Is this really, like, oh my God, that's a lofty goal. And we had a lot of people, saying things during the retreat where we're like, oh my gosh, like, but it just seems like so big. I don't even know how to start, and I don't know where to start. And I caution myself from saying like, this is what's happening, because like, I just don't know how to see that. And, granted, we will have to dive into the how, which is kind of the next part that we'll talk about in just a second. But when you allow yourself to dream big, then you at least have a sense of where you want to go. And maybe the vision might take, as you start to formulate more of a detailed plan, you might end up realizing like, okay, well, I have this in the plan, but maybe in a timeline fashion, it's not going to be realistic to actually get done. But it will at least give you what your end game is, so that you can say, well, what's realistic for 2022? But it also gives you that whole, because we're not thinking about dreaming 5 years in advance or whatnot, because so many things can change. But if you allow yourself to vision what's possible, you can always take the ideal and then bring it down to like, okay, what's more realistic and what would actually make me feel like I'm successful at the end of 2022. And maybe that's just progress toward that goal. But we don't have to necessarily, be so finite with our plans. We have to be flexible, because we could, surprise ourselves and get done with that thing that might have seemed so scary that we didn't know about, get done even before the next year begins, or, halfway through the year, when if we just kind of sold ourselves short, then that's like our outer boundary. And so I really encourage you, as you're going through this visioning process, really thinking about what you want, allow yourself to dream big, allow yourself to feel the feelings of like, when I say I did this thing, what type of rush of adrenaline or energy comes in? Maybe what type of fear shows up, but like, are you so excited that you are willing to push beyond the fear? You want to pay attention to some of the feelings that you're feeling, as well as when you're claiming some of these things out loud. One of the activities that we did in terms of like kind of solidifying visions for us was to actually say out loud what parts of our vision were, because I think that there's that voice in your head where you're like, yeah, that's what I want to do. But when you actually have to tell somebody, you're like, oh, then you feel even another rush of different feelings. And so, as you're creating a vision for yourself, I would encourage you to, because if you're not doing this as part of, the retreat and having it facilitated for you, go do your vision, and then go, if you have a significant other or if you have a friend, go meet them for coffee, or, talk it over through a meal and be like, hey, this is the stuff that came up for me. Or even do a role play to say, hey, it's the end of 2022. I want to tell you about all the amazing things that I did in 2022 this year. Do that role play and actually physically say what was in your vision, and see what comes up as you're doing that. But I think it's really, really important to, that first step was knowing where you're at. The second step is knowing what your vision is and being able to communicate that vision, which then takes us to the third step of this planning process, which is then trying to start crafting the more detailed version. And here's where I still stress that in an annual planning weekend, you're not saying like, okay, here are the specific dates of what I'm going to do, and here's like the step by step thing of how I'm going to get from point A to point B. But there's two different pieces that we try to do in our annual planning process. One is to create a reverse plan. Um, this is effective in the way where, you know, you're kind of looking at your end goal and trying to take some steps backward and saying like, what can I do, you know, in each month prior to kind of make those steps, you know, have me show up at this next step. So it kind of breaks you down into steps that are a little bit more chunked out, right? Because again, those fears can kind of creep up when you are trying to create those details, and you're concerned about the how. This kind of breaks it down for you a little bit and says, okay, if by, I'm going to use an example, or maybe Gary or Rebecca, do you want to do like a live reverse plan of like something that you guys had that you wanted to accomplish in 2022? Can I take one of you guys as a guinea pig to do? Just one of you volunteer.
Yeah.
Okay, Gary. Okay, so what was something that you had in one of your visions? And one of the things that I also didn't mention is that you want to think about your vision by looking at like all the different areas of the wheel of life. But so, Gary, what was something that you had visioned for yourself wanting to accomplish or do in 2022? Was like
Yeah.
that you're excited about?
Yeah, one of the biggest things is publishing my first book.
Okay.
So that is, yeah, the big
Awesome.
thing.
Okay, so Gary is the book is going to be published in 2022 at some point. Do you have an idea of like when that ideal time might be? Is it
Into Q1?
end of Q1? Okay. So that was something that he had in his vision that, you know, by the end of 2022, he's going to be saying, I'm a published author. Okay. So if the book is coming out in 2022, let's think back about, you know, or think forward all the way to like Q4 of 2022. What do you envision in terms of the book? Like, what will you be doing in that later quarter with regards to the book?
Yeah. You know, by then, so the point of the book is, you know, to help with my speaking career and workshops and stuff like that. So I can see in Q4 of 2022, you know, one of the things like I sort of like was playing around visioning is, you know, carrying a stack of books in with me to a conference, you know, to, you know, plop on the table, or even better yet, you know, speaking of the ASC, when we have our next in person, you know, putting those books in the little swag bags that we have, you know, as little gifts and stuff like that.
Yeah, so the retreat happens in Q4, so he's got this vision of like having that book as something to hand out to in-person attendees. That's an incentive for those of you who want to come in person and those of you who are already signed up. Okay, so that's kind of Q4. So what, in order to make that happen in Q4, is there anything in particular that you think you're going to be doing in Q3 with regards to the book?
Yeah. So in order to like, you know, feel confident about like, oh yeah, I have all these books, it's you know, how am I, you know, developing this community around this? So you know, the people that have read the book, having, and we've even talked about this like within you know, our group, of having like a little sub community within the ASC, you know, that, you know, I'm calling the Play Rebel Alliance, and having very specific challenges in there that are helping people, you know, use the material of the book to, you know, sort of help them, you know, be the best version of themselves.
Awesome. So we're going to continue this reverse plan, and we're looking at Q2, which is like the spring. So April, May, June. So what do you envision that you'll be doing around that time?
Yeah. And so that is, you know, initial sort of, or not initial, but like a lot of promotion around the book, because the book is going to be already out. So, you know, podcast interviews, you know, doing contests, doing another one of my play challenges, that was the inspiration for the book.
Yes. Awesome. So it's he's going to be in book launch mode in Q2, and then Q1 is the, leading up to the launch, I'm assuming, because that's what you were saying, that when it was going to come out. So what do you envision that you'll be doing in Q1?
Yeah. So that's the editing, all like the behind the scenes stuff of, getting it, getting the design and all of that nailed down. What are the resources, all like all of the like logistical stuff.
Yeah, and getting ready and still promoting too, right? Because
Yep.
you want to have the hype all increased before the book comes out and people like waiting to just like click purchase.
Yes.
That's awesome. And so now we're in this current quarter. So where are you right now, and what are the things that you are the most tangible action items that you've got on the docket with regard to the book?
Yeah. Well, the first big thing is we finished the first draft of the manuscript. I'm working with an awesome editor. And so now it's starting the editing process and refining. So that's the big thing. And then some other little stuff, looking for some potential big names to potentially do a forward in the book, or, things of that nature. So it is a lot of, sort of hard work still left ahead. But yeah.
Yay! I am so excited to read this book. This is amazing. So, but now I just went through the process of having Gary talk about it. So now we've got this captured so we can take a look and see if he's really going to, follow that trend through. And, we don't know. Things can come up and that can derail the plan, but at least he has some like general benchmarks of like things he might be doing, which would then impact, like his workload, which could then also impact all the other things that he has in this vision. And so, one of the things that, I didn't mention prior to this is that, the fact that you might have a lot of stuff that is envisioned as part of your 2022 plan, right? The book is not all that Gary is planning on doing, right? He's got family goals. He's got his own fun goals. He's got money goals. He's got, social goals. All of these things have to happen concurrently. So it's really, really important for him to, as he's starting to put, piece together those visions that he can actually see as a timeline, it can give him that opportunity to be like, hey, maybe I need to spread some things out here, or maybe I need to tweak this vision a little bit so that I can still see the success that I want, but maybe it's modified so that I can, I can still get those things done. Or do we have other goals that we can kind of lump in together with each other, where, this is, I think about, he's going to be promoting this book, and, I think about it from the perspective of like, I have goals to, grow the ASC. So how can I support Gary, knowing that his book is coming out and knowing that we can leverage that as part of the Accountability Success Circle, which is where we run, and how can I support him? So there's this idea of thinking about how can you multitask goals, not within the different areas of your life, but also multitasking in the sense of helping support other people and having concurrent goals that can support each other. And that's where some of the productivity of like, how can I get this done in a more timely manner, or how can I streamline this so that it's not just fulfilling this one goal that I have, but it's also fulfilling some of my other goals and maybe some other people who I care about's goals. You might want to think about that when it comes to, if you have a spouse or a significant other who's, your goals are your goals, but then you might have goals that align with your partner. And so can you work together to accomplish a goal so that it's not all, the burden of the work is not all on you? Like, who can you rally in your tribe to help you support your goals, because maybe they have similar goals as well. So there's that. So in that process, there's parts of the reverse planning, which I was just mentioning, is taking kind of some of those projects that are in your vision that you can actually have, specific timelines that you can set. Now, you might notice that some of the visions that you have don't necessarily have a project timeline, but it is maybe, as we were saying, as part of the vision, you might want to think about like how you want to show up differently. And so, and Rebecca, I might ask you to help me kind of do a demo of this, but there might be certain things that might not require like a timeline of like, I got to do this and then I got to do that, but like I want to show up a different way. And so, Rebecca, if you're willing, is there anything in your visioning that was more of a, something new that you wanted to do that might not necessarily be project based, but like a different way that you wanted to show up this year in any of your visioning in any of the areas of life?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to remember any specifics, but I definitely know that career-wise and professionally, that was really where most of my work was in the career chunk, and just to show up even more. One of the words I used was responsibly, and organized might be a good one. So just to feel more organized.
Yeah. So organization, that could be, partial project, but then, it's something that then you want to sustain. And I have that as one of in my career, I'm looking at my wall because I have all of my visions up. But like one of the things that I said was like, I wanted to have consistent operations when it came to career. So, sometimes there can be specific action items that you can take. But then there's also, in terms of getting yourself into that process of like being organized, right? Because it's not like, organized is something that you'd probably want to sustain once you got there. And there might be some, initial legwork that would need to be done in order for you to feel organized. But if there's not specific, tangible, like action items of things that you can do, what are some things that maybe you have to make decisions on that, like once you do them, then it's kind of becomes part of the habit. So when you're thinking about wanting to be more organized in your business or whatnot, what are some questions that you have? And maybe it's not reverse planning that's required, but just thinking about like what are the different things that that you could address to help you feel more organized?
Yeah, probably. Well, I personally would probably start at just looking in my systems as I'm like going through all my different, whatever, Dropbox, all these online things, like going at an like totally virtual segment of how can I organize that. And then also probably a whole other separate thing would be looking at my day-to-day, like how my calendar system's working.
Yeah.
So just starting to figure out how organization, it's really everywhere, but those are probably the top two places I would go first.
Yeah. So if reverse planning doesn't work for a particular part of your vision, then this is the other kind of strategy that you can take, and is kind of asking yourself, okay, I want to have this feeling of being more of something, or, this could be confidence, or this could be, one of the things that I had was, I want to, I'm trying to think of what I wanted to do, continue to be more creative, which doesn't necessarily have like a specific project of like, because there's not really a lot of clarity around that, but you could also think about like, well, what are some questions that I can ask myself that are going to help me live out that vision? And so you don't necessarily need to reverse plan, but you can also, just think about like, well, what types of decisions do I need to make to start to implement little things in my systems so that then it becomes this like humming machine. And it might just be something where, you tried some different things and you get clarity, and then you make, you kind of like refine and tune to something that feels more organized, and there might be some projects that could be a part of that, but really thinking about, well, what's the step-by-step process, because there could be things I just don't know about. I don't have enough clarity about like setting an actual plan, but I know that that's the feeling that I want to get. So what is the next, what are the next couple steps that I can take to try to get that feeling, or, to implement that into my day-to-day? Because if it's a feeling, it's not necessarily as easy to be like, okay, well, if I'm going to be organized in 2022, like what do I need to do in, Q4? It's not as easy, if that makes sense. So there's two different ways to kind of start to craft that plan. And some of them are thinking about your immediate steps, or, things that you can try, or really like breaking down the bigger projects into like chunks like we did with Gary's book planning. So really thinking about taking that vision, but going through everything that you envisioned and saying like, what do I need to do in order to like make sure that this vision is fulfilled by the end of 2022? Because you're almost kind of like, here's where you are, here's where you want to be. And then the third process is really thinking about what happens in between and how do we get more clarity. And the only way to really craft that plan is to start to chunk things down. So that's step 3. And then step 4, once you create that plan, is you start taking action, and then you kind of go in this cycle of reflecting and tweaking as you go, right? This is why I am stressing again, you don't necessarily need to have like the, granular level detail of what your plan is, because you have to go through this process of reflection, refinement, and taking action again. You'll be taking in inputs throughout the year, things that are going to distract you and derail you, feelings that are going to of fear that are going to stop you from taking action, and you need to constantly be in that reflective process. We talk a lot about just the whole premise of the accountability success circle is to help hold you accountable to the goals and dreams that you have. And accountability and taking action, that's a huge part of it, right? Because if you have a plan that you can't execute, then it just remains a plan and nothing gets done. But you need to figure out the processes in which are going to help you get to that vision, and that's where the hardest work is, and that happens beyond the planning and retreat, but also thinking about, as part of your annual planning, like what are the systems that you need to put in place to hold yourself accountable to the plan that you just created. We talked about this at the retreat in terms of, the community, the accountability success circle in itself is a great tool that you can leverage to hold yourself accountable to the goals that you set, by just sharing every Friday what you accomplish, or coming up and showing up at the retreat and sharing what you want to accomplish. Like now, all the people who are at the retreat, we know what they want to accomplish, and we have that to kind of dangle over them, to encourage them to live out this plan that they created over the weekend. So being able to have those things put in place are super, super important. But then, it's in the weeds where we kind of get stuck, right? The fear sets in, the distractions. How do we get ourselves past that? And, and one of it is just having the self-awareness that we are making progress or not making progress in a way that we'd like, so that we can continue to get ourselves like over those humps that inevitably happen throughout the year. I kind of want to turn it back to Rebecca and Gary, like at this point, to just get their feedback around just the importance of, like, once you've created that plan, how important it is to have those structures in place so that we don't forget all the things that we did in this annual planning little retreat for ourselves. I don't know who wants to go first.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, once you get started and get that momentum, it's all about, making consistent steps. And it's easier, even though like in the upfront, it may seem scary. It's like, oh my gosh, what if I make a mistake, and or what if I'm getting off, like telling, putting this out loud, telling people, it helps. It helps just because there's just something magical about saying it out loud. It's like it makes it a little bit more concrete. And there's something about having that accountability, having those people with those gentle reminders, like, hey, how's it going? And in the moment, it may not necessarily feel good. It's like, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm falling off. However, it keeps it in the forefront, and it allows you to make progress, compared to if you say nothing, and then, like the quote that, is going to be on cups and mug, when life gets lifey. If you don't have it out there, and people talking about it and asking you about it, you can easily look back 3, 6 months from now and be on a completely different trajectory, just because something minor happened and, it's not in the forefront. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Rebecca, do you have anything to add?
Not totally, but it was making me just think of years ago when I heard it through like a Tony Robbins Oprah sort of thing. I don't know who said it first, but you got to burn the boat to take the island sort of thing. So, and proclaiming, and whatever I was watching or listening to at the time, it really drilled in the piece of what Gary was just sharing, of just like, even just putting it out there. And so by like talking about whatever it is that you're looking to accomplish, not only will you gain some accountability in that, depending on how strong that works for you. For me, it does. And then I also know people where they might say that and it's still real easy for them to be like, whatever, I didn't accomplish that. And so what? But there's still like that energetic piece of it that once you put it out there, I also believe that not only are you receiving some accountability, but you're also just calling in like what you need. It's just another little step forward into the unknown that you're looking to create. Like you're looking to create something known in the future that you want out of just an unknown kind of present. So by just reaching out, and whether you can find an accountability buddy or just saying that, it helps to burn the boat. So it helps to burn any excuses. If you want to take the island, you got to get rid of that thing that's going to, that little excuse boat that's going to keep you, able to go back to like your comfort zone sort of thing. So I just think there's a lot of power in whatever form of accountability, whether it's just putting it in the group, finding a friend, whatever.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, I think it is so important too. There's different ways that you can motivate yourself, and community is such a great way to do it, because you've got people who are your cheerleaders and, obviously hoping for the best for you. And I think also you can really feed off of other people's energy when they've accomplished something and they feel good about it, and it inspires you. So making sure that you are putting yourself in spaces where you can be inspired and motivated to take action, because energy is everything. And staying around energies that are going to like drain us, unknowingly like prevent us from doing the things that we want, just by being in that space of the negative energy. So always thinking positively, always thinking about how you can set yourself up for success every morning. Like every day is a new challenge. And, if you have a bad day, the best thing that you can look forward to is that you can go to sleep and wake up tomorrow and start all over again. Like there's never, taking steps back. It's always just, what can you do that is, one step toward your vision that, takes you away from where you are, and really, really thinking about that. And so, I know that the last year's webinar, I really got into some of the detailed steps of the things that we did in our annual planning process. But, this year I wanted to take some time to just really be in that reflective state, because I told everybody this at the retreat, and, this is a process that, doesn't necessarily need to be facilitated and here's a step-by-step plan. And I really wanted to like gloss over the main highlights of the steps, because really how you execute the plan, or, the annual planning process, can you can create it however way that works for you. But I think that the biggest challenge that comes with doing an annual plan is like setting aside the time to do it. Because I can share like, here's the step-by-step process, and here's where you can, what you need to do next. And you could probably even refer back to our last year's webinar that gives a little bit more structure around how to do that annual plan. But it really like just comes down to those 4 steps. 1, know where you're at right now. Number 2, figure out where you want to go. Number 3, try to start breaking that how into chunks that are easy and digestible. And then number 4, find some structure to hold yourself accountable to the plan that you just created. Without those 4 basic steps, there's really, you're just kind of in this like, okay, I know what I want, I'm going to just go for it. But if you really take a look at from a holistic perspective, what you want to accomplish in life, you will end up next year, this time, feeling that much more fulfilled, because you know that you have created some sort of structure to like feedback loop. Like, this is what my vision was. How am I getting there? And you might need to change things along the way, and that's okay. A plan is a plan. It's not like a roadmap that's set in stone and that you have to follow every single turn, right? It's there's the option to shortcut, or there's the option to take the long scenic route. That's all what you get to decide. But so I just wanted to make sure that, I highlighted those steps. But the most important thing, if you're watching this, is craft some time. Obviously, we had our retreat 2 weekends ago, and that was committing to that time. We even, have already planned out the time for next year so that we can really take like a full weekend on our own outside of our home bases to really think about what it is that we want. And that might just be the first step for you, is to make that a process that you want to try to commit to. There's still time to plan, of course, but I really think that October is the sweet spot. And so if you are somebody who's thinking about like, I kind of want to get on this bandwagon, I'm seeing, just from the conversations today, what the benefits of doing this. And, maybe I've missed the opportunity to do this with the ASC this year, but like, I kind of want to try and like get caught up and then make it easier for me next year. Definitely reach out. Like, we are now selling the retreat for 2023 planning, which will happen in 2022. It's October 7th through 9th, 2022. We are going to be announcing very shortly, like location and all that. But put that on your calendar. And if you're interested in joining us, here's what we are willing to do for you. Sign up for next year's retreat, and we will give you access to all of the video and all the content that we did in this year's retreat, which we did facilitate live in person, live virtually, and for on demand. And we will dedicate ourselves to helping navigate through the plan and help you get caught up so that you can feel really awesome going into 2022 and then create this habitual cycle of making that commitment to plan in 2022. So I'm going to put that link in the chat for those of you who are outside of the ASC right now. That link is in the YouTube chat that you're seeing. I'll also try to put it in the description once we're done. But if you are in the ASC and you're really thinking about like, hey, I kind of want to jump on this bandwagon, reach out to any of us, me, Gary, or Rebecca, and we can help facilitate you through creating a solid 2022 plan, because it's not too late. And we really want to set you up for success, and we don't want you waiting till next year, but we want to also incentivize you to get on this bandwagon with us, because it's super fun to do it together in community. So I think that's all I wanted to share. Gary and Rebecca, do you guys have any last final thoughts as we wrap up? And if you are watching this live and you have any questions on anything, then feel free to put that in the chat. Or if you're in the ASC and you're seeing the replay, feel free to share any questions in the comments or reach out to us individually if that makes you more comfortable. But Gary or Rebecca, any last words?
Nailed it.
Nailed it. No, you guys just don't want to talk. That's all. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, no, this is a super important process, and I think maybe we just end on how we feel right now, having been like 2 weeks out of planning and what has kind of shifted for us. I know that for me, I came home and, last year when we did this retreat, I was like exhausted because of the way that I was also trying to do the planning at the same time as everyone else. And then I just felt like I was exhausted because I was facilitating and trying to do my plan at the same time. But because I was able to do my planning separately so that I could really be present and facilitate with, facilitate for all the attendees. I came back, I took a few days of rest, and then I just got back into my plan, and I'm already starting, some of my project work. I feel super motivated. I haven't felt this motivated in a long time. How about you guys? Rebecca, how are you feeling now 2 weeks out from the retreat?
Well, like I shared at the retreat, those of you that were there, I just am still in this totally scraping down to the surface. My inboxes, though, are basically to zero now, which is crazy. I went from having like 10,000 emails in one of them. I don't know, that one I'm still kind of sorting through, but like when I go anyway. So I've definitely, I'm in good motion, and I want to get down to that like bare bottom so then I can really start to plant the seeds for next year. But it's all swirling, like no doubt. And John and I, since he went too, we had a little recap session like 2 days later, and so it's good to have that accountability. But yeah, I mean, I'm following through just the Q4 of this year, which I really hadn't thought a lot about, but it was super helpful to just be like, okay, wait, what do I need to do still right now so I can feel even more ready to start for next year? And I have taken some little baby steps, but anyway, it's been good. But I've definitely just been getting rid of emails, trimming the fat, like just getting it all out of there.
Yeah, and it's all in preparation for what she's going to do in 2022, which is amazing. How about you, Gary? How are you feeling?
Same. Really excited. Time just goes by quick. And so I love that we set the time aside to do it, because now it's all about implementation. And yeah, little baby steps.
Yay. So if you want to feel this great, come check us out, accountabilitysuccesscircle.com, if you're watching this and new to the whole community. Those of you in the community, reach out to us, show up to, just ask us what we can do to support you. Because, whether or not you attended the retreat, we want you to embrace this process. And we would obviously love for you to join us in a future year. But, I know that people have their own things and all that, but we want to just emphasize the benefits of crafting a 2022 plan right now instead of waiting until January. So with that, we're going to head out, but thank you so much for those of you who are watching and who were watching live and who are going to watch this on the replay. And we are just wishing you the best 2022 ever. We've got 2 more months before we really hit the ground running, and we want to be there to support you in making sure that happens. So reach out to us if you need it. So bye. See you guys in a future webinar next month. Woohoo! See you later.